we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not.
That doesn't look right anymore. I got it better. Yeah, that's better. Hi there, and welcome to Better Than Not, the podcast that aims to capture shifting perspectives and thought-provoking ideas in conversation, based loosely on my series of Changing Frame of Reference, which you can read on the Substack app. And I hope you will, as it might give you some insight into what the podcast is all about. I'm your host, Doug Gardam, and today I'm excited to have a returning guest, Mr. Payman Kianpour. Payman, how are you?
I'm good. Never better.
So this is a kind of an impromptu, I'll call it, episode of Better Than Not. I'm in town where Payman finds his home and offices, and thought it would kind of be neat to do an in-person podcast here in his office here in Concord. So, Payman, great to have you here. And who knows where we're going to go, because we're two kind of tired lads. Both of us have, I flew in last night, and Payman was up early with some discussions with some customers. And when I say early, I mean the middle of the night. But as always, we usually have some pretty interesting conversations. And as I mentioned before, Payman is the founder and president of Capstrom, which is, the best way I could say it is kind of like the DNA of design, working with companies to help them get right down to the bottom of how they design things and the values that they associate with that. That said, Payman and I met years ago, and we've kind of kept up this, I'll say, relationship. And we always find we go down interesting rabbit holes as we kind of converse. Is that fairly accurate?
Yes. We basically put a DNA on a product, so use the human complexity to basically inspire product design. So,
When you say DNA, you use different, I'll say, words for what that means in the design.
we basically translate that into design limit for D, nature of failure for N, and actual life. So design limit, nature of failure, actual life. How long a product lasts, or what the limits are, and how would it fail in between.
Right.
Basically, the same way that the DNA works, the DNA test probably works for human. It tells you, what kind of age you could actually live through, what kind of problems you could have in your body, and what your limits are. So pretty much a bit more accurate than the DNA, biological DNA, but it's basically inspired by the same concept.
And on numerous occasions, we've kind of talked about this in different ways. The last time we kind of talked, Payman brought in a very interesting perspective to me as talking about design and love, but the fact of really having to love those that you're working with in this design community, and how that works to improve it all, which we will step into probably a little farther as we go into this. But over some of our discussion today, Payman brought a new kind of forward perspective to me, which I thought was, okay, this is kind of an interesting way of looking at things. And it kind of fits with storming, norming, performing, and starts with
Forming.
Yeah. And let's break this down a little bit, Payman, because it's like you kind of gave it to me as an idea of talking with people. But when we talked about it, the more this whole kind of forming, storming, norming, and then performing kind of fit together. And I liked it because it doesn't work really well as an acronym. Like some of these things that just kind of flow. You're starting here with the first one around forming.
Yeah, it seems that it's not necessarily a new a new encounter or new sort of e- event in which you will visit new people. It seems to be happening in every conversation naturally. Like this is
Yes.
this is what this
This is what we do.
it is what we do. Like in even you people you know for years, every conversation seems to be just differently sort of balanced in against one factor or some. You always start with forming. You get to a person's
Yeah.
face and you
Yeah.
start you start a discussion, and typically we are always opposing. Typically we are opposing each other, so we do storming. We form first and we start storming because we don't understand each other first, and then you're too quick in your ideas, or you're too deep, and the other person is not really into it. And then but the question is, how do we get from storming to the
Performing.
to the norming part?
Yes. Yeah.
That is a part that if we don't fall apart during the storming, then we have the norming and performing in front
Right.
of us. The question is, how do we get through storming without ego, without emotion, and just maybe using our passion to basically encourage the other part to participate
Right.
and go through this. That is a trick. That is an art, because a lot of conversations just break apart during the storming.
You're upset.
You're upset at each other. You don't.
Yes.
There's a lack of respect. You feel lack of respect. You misunderstandings and so on. So that is the part that you cannot avoid the storming. If you ever have storming, if you don't have a storming, then the statement from Denzel Washington
Yes.
this is up that says, if devil is ignoring you, then you're doing definitely something wrong. So that is art that we're trying to manage and this is hour by hour. Like, it's not something that we're putting into our vision or into our, the way of life. No, it's hour by hour with your son, with your daughter, with your colleagues, with your. Try to actually experience that storming, because, in my opinion, if the storming is not there, it seems that the two parties are talking about very uninteresting stuff.
Artificially. Like it's not genuine.
It's not genuine, and it's not interesting. Like, it's, can I get a glass of water? Yeah, okay, here's a glass
Let's
of
try
water.
not to offend one another.
Yeah, like when the storming part is not there, you shouldn't be happy.
Well, what's interesting to me in having worked with you in our various conversations is you have this unique ability not to antagonize. And yet, like, you can storm, but one doesn't feel offended in that mode. You're curious, and you can ask some pretty interesting questions. But by and large, it's like you're still wanting to get to that norming stage, even though you're kind of storming through it. And to me, without the storming, are you really? We'll come back to your idea of love and design. Love is an emotion, right? It's a deep emotion.
It's a question. It's also a question about what I was thinking. In our previous podcast, I said, we got to love people, and that's part of the deal. It's a different conversation, but I'm coming back recently to define love.
Oh,
Also, it's
we didn't talk about this.
But yeah, sticking to this topic of storming. Storming means touching on somebody's nerve.
Yes.
Touching on routine, touching on convention, touching on something that people have been doing it for quite some time, and now you're questioning it, and that's how you push the human race forward.
Yes, there's no question about that. Yes.
So and nothing is and you basically storm the comfort zone and generate a discomfort, and that's what life is all about, right?
Well, it's the fine balance to me. Like I think you see this even in the arts, and like definitely around creative activities like making music or making art. You're struggling with your emotions. We have this sense that we're supposed to be. We don't like the word happy, but you're not supposed to be confronted with some of the harder emotions. And you're kind of saying here, if you don't get to those emotions,
Yeah,
you're not really serving the purpose of what your intention is, I don't think.
yeah. That's these are the parts that it's a very borderline between passion, emotion, and even love. Like these are all mixture of words that we constantly use to be able to express our interest. We're interested, so we're emotional. We're loving it. We're passionate
Correct.
about it. So these are all words, man-made, made up words to be able to show that we want to do it. We are interested. We want to be part of it, right? Physically and spend time with it. So it's the storming part again is the part that counts. Is the part that now how do we manage a storming part? The
Yes.
storming part.
How do you get away from the person standing up and walking away from the table, including yourself? You've just annoyed me. I'm not accepting your perspective. How do you see us kind of working through that? Because you've been in this situation
Yes, many
this
times.
morning.
This morning, 4 times, 3 times. The question comes into the managing of a storm is question and answers. You have to use intelligence to be able to get through this,
Right.
through this storm, right? You have to basically maneuver through the waves, right, to get to the shore, right? If you're reckless and just hit the wave every single one of them, you break the ship. So that is the part that I think it requires practical, intelligent practices. You need to be able to have question and answers. Like if you feel that the person is not coming along with your idea, which is perfect, because if they come along with your idea, new ideas are not born. So the storm is the part, and you say, okay, question, how would you do it? How would you handle it? How would you do it? How would you configure it? Questions, and then when the answer comes in, you got to listen to understand the answer, not to respond. Listen to understand, not listen to respond. So you put all your prejudice about the topic aside and try to understand. And every week, every other hour in my Kepstrom's life, which is life. I can't even Kepstrom. I encounter that, and I have to practice that because it's easy to get away to get carried away, and show emotions and and blame others. Okay. As soon as you blame others, game is over. Your mind is shut. You are we're experiencing a non-intelligence. The moment we blame others, and this is the fact that I learned over life that, in every problem that I'm encountering, I'm the common denominator. So how could I blame others for it? Right?
That's such an observation from your perspective. That's kind of
okay. I blame somebody because he or she didn't get my opinion, so I didn't get it right. Also, but you will encounter a lot of conversations that even with questions and answers, people try to divert it into different directions, and you need to stop those conversations. You don't want to question and answers that are streamlined towards the conclusion. Is those question and answer, those sessions are helpful. Once people are trying to maneuver the actual topic, then you got to stop at storm and go back and come back later for trial again.
Well, I think what you're often trying to do, and this is follow some of our discussions, is trying to determine, is this to win an argument or is this to get to the best design? the best solution. And
There is no winning the argument. There is no failures. There is no success. There is none of these things. It's about life is about expectations. You have a certain expectation, the other person has a certain expectation. Either the two expectations match and something will get done, or the two expectations don't match and people dramatically call it we failed and we're failing and tragedy of fail. No, it just didn't match expectation.
well, you kind of have a new definition for both failure and success because you don't like those terms.
No.
And
I
you feel
recently dropped the failure.
yeah, like you don't even.
I don't feel that it's a success. I dropped it long ago because success is just in the eyes of others. Nobody lives inside you to see how much turbulence and turmoil you go through every day to,
Yes.
your people look at you and say, oh, this guy has this. People count your blessing for you, basically, and they count it as a success. So success is a very is in the eyes of others. But failure, people learn from failure. But how do we learn from failure? That's a question.
Yes. Yeah.
That we don't repeat it. And for all my life, I've been trying to understand this. What is failure? Okay, I failed to get this account. All right. So what do we learn from it?
Yeah. Well, that's key, right?
The key is, but the person didn't give. This is the part. We failed, and the person didn't tell us what happened, and we're in the dark because no, we didn't learn. How do we learn? So what is the learning for the next failure? In this case,
Right.
I didn't learn anything. What we learned through this lack of feedback was that we cannot leave the room until we understand the expectation.
Right.
Basically, we have to fail fast in the room. Don't understand. Try to understand people's counterparts' expectation if you need them, because you need them. You're approaching them, right?
Yeah.
And then over time, you generate when you can meet the expectation, then they need you because you can meet the expectation.
And you probably find out here whether they even know what that expectation is, right? Like, do they know what the plan is? Like, I think there's an Einstein quote around spending like 95% of your time on understanding the problem versus just jumping, because we do tend to like to be around that instant solution. And how many instant solutions do actually have any kind of longevity?
They always say that to every complex problem, there's a simple solution. There's always wrong. That's what we're fixing, and in this context.
Well, I would even go with the failure success thing around. Do we learn anything? That's
The
not
learning
a failure.
part. The learning part is important. Like you go through the exercise, and then somebody says, "I don't want to do this." It would be extremely difficult at that point. It would be literally when people have no interest, they probably don't want to continue talking to you because the interest is gone. They've worn out.
Yeah.
So the trick in life is that you understand, you extract that expectation during the forming and storming part.
Okay.
Because if you fall apart during the storming, nobody comes back to you and explains to you, because nobody cares at that point. When the care factor still is in the storming, because people are still there. People are still part of that.
They have the energy to fight back.
They have the energy. They have the energy.
I think, from what I'm understanding, and this to me again fits with whether it be music, whether it be writing, is you're getting over that part that is. This is why I think this is important.
Yeah.
And you may actually come in speaking about it to realize, well, actually, it's not that important. But you have to go through that exercise, and this takes a long time.
It takes that, and you have to watch for other parties' energy as well, because sometimes you have a lot of energy, you want to put that in, you get do a lot of questions and answers, but the other party just gets tired. And so it's really and art. So I try. I every day I try, because sometimes you get caught up with your own emotions, and
Sure.
you're boiling inside. You have a lot to say, and the more you say, the less you get, basically.
And this is where what you talked about before around having love and loving your neighbor, loving the people that you're
Yeah.
working with. If you don't, you can't really stay the course with this storming part.
Yes, you have to. The loving part is that everybody has something to offer. Everybody has. If the person sitting in front of you at that time and age, they have done something great in life to be able to be there.
Right.
You need to believe in it. You cannot override any. You have to believe that the person at any time and age that's sitting in front of you, they have done something great in life.
So when you're going through this came up in another conversation I had a while ago, and you may not encounter this, but when someone's providing a point or arguing a point that you don't think is particularly important, we kind of like to jump to well, they're just not thinking, they're stupid or whatever to that point.
Blaming point. As soon as you start blaming somebody else, I think if I want to be very harsh, we are basically stopping the intelligence. I want to be very harsh about that, because as soon as you say, yeah, these guys, everybody's got a game. I have a game, you have a game, that person has a game. You see that in the political scene all the time. People blame each other, people call each other, call events war, here, that. Everybody's playing their game. You play yours,
Yes.
they play theirs.
And they could be very different.
Could be very different. So what can we do? I think that's a very harsh statement from my side, that if you start blaming, that means you're taking an easy path out, easy way out.
Well, it kind of like is 101 debating too, right? In the sense that if your point's not getting across, attack your opponent personally with an emotional statement. Because if you get them upset, to your point, the intelligence, the thinking leaves because you're emotionally distraught and you don't think necessarily the same way. But you've got to work your way through that, is what you're saying in the struggling side. Like keep the energy so that when you go into that mode, you're still being able to continue on with the discussion. And this is, to me, what I would think would be very unique in dealing with Capstrom, is you have learned approaches to being able to deal with this.
We're trying every day, and we look at it, and in every conversation, I try to implement this strategy intelligently, because it has to be, it's by practice.
Right.
Humankind is easy for humankind to be emotional, to yell and scream. It's very easy for us. That's part of our genetics as human.
We're emotional beings.
Yeah, that's right. So how do you do that how do you keep other people interested in the conversation? That's the key. How do I keep this person interested? I need to value the person's opinion or thinking, thoughts. You need to constantly ask for their position, and to guide you. You have to put them into a harder position, that I'm looking to your guidance, like I'm looking to your experience. There's no such thing as give me some advice. What does that mean? I mean, that advice is another one of those. I can't give you advice. What advice? I have experience in life. I have life story, and share life story with you.
But when someone asks you for advice, there's something that is encouraging. I think it falls into the pride world, where you're kind of
it's a common word. It's a common word people use. Give us some advice. You hear that all the time. Yes. But everybody lives a life. Everybody has a life story. Everybody has a different life story. You can tell me. I can tell you my portion of 30s when I was
Yes.
30 years old. I can give you that story. You can extract and use a shopping cart to pick and choose. But I cannot tell you, no, in life you have to do this all the time. That doesn't make any sense. You could
It
feel
doesn't.
very proud, but it doesn't really do it.
necessarily.
Because nobody can live your life.
So your concept again, and it's not really a concept, it's a way you work and where you live, is this love to one another, right? Because without the love, you
Yeah.
can't make that
Yeah, they
work.
cannot get through that storm.
You can't get over that. You can't get past that picture. It's like, well, they just don't like me. I'm going to stand up and walk
Yeah.
out.
Without that love, I experienced that today. Without that love, you can't get through the storm. You have to love people. You must love. I mean, you have to exercise that because it's easy to dismiss others.
Right.
It's easy to blame others. It's easy to ignore. And also, one more thing is that one of the big ignoring people is the worst thing you can ever do. That's most damaging to anyone.
Yes. Yes.
Sometimes, okay, things you see that it's like dichotomy, the two tennis courts, you're playing two different sides. Yeah, at that point you need to decide whether that's the field you want to be in, that's the game you want to be in or not.
Right.
You cannot be that kind of conversation with everyone. So you have to find, I think you have to gauge the conversation during the storming to see whether, is this operating based on the same mindset? They both want to get results, or everybody's just playing a tennis court, two players
Right.
playing tennis on two different courts. That storm, you cannot do anything about it.
Because you're not connected.
You're not connected. If you're not connected, then you need to validate that and just walk away with in peace.
So when you look at these forming, storming, norming, performing, a big chunk of this is the storming part.
Storming
From what, as you talk here, this is what's starting to be like, if not the most important. Because it's out of the storming that you get to being able to progress.
Yeah, storming to norming, basically. How do you manage the storming to norming? But if you don't have the storming, you have to question the conversation.
It's interesting that that's where
the devil is ignoring you. So you're doing something wrong. Yeah. So
yes.
That storming part, I think it's got to come and it's got to be managed. That is the.
So with that, for many, this is confrontation.
Yes. Again, it's another man-made word, made up. We have so many of these made up games.
But many of us don't like confrontation. Like we don't like disagreement.
We don't like discomfort.
This is where it starts to turn around. Like, and I think I've said before, I know I have that in podcasts, is if I'm not uncomfortable, I'm not doing this thing called life right.
Yeah.
And it seems quite contrary to how we hear that, well, we're not supposed to suffer. I'm trying not to use the H word for you.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's one of those things to me, and this falls again into what you're saying, is that there's going to be suffering in this life. Now we could pretend that we can get rid of suffering and just be the H all the time, but you're kind of in a false world if that's the case, because you're going to have confrontation, you're going to have pain, you're going to have suffering. And to me, when you're in this storming part of this, shall we say, well, you're saying the forming, storming, norming, and I'm getting pretty good at this. It's performing. This storming part, you're saying, is not only the most uncomfortable and potentially the most disastrous, but it's also the most important.
Most important, because it comes back to the same philosophy I think we talked about. Why are we here? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to experience? The only time we have the chance to be on Earth, right? Comfort. Well, then it goes to the contrary of the major statement every day made. The person is resting in peace and is in a better place. So if I'm supposed to rest in peace till eternity, why would I spend the few years that I have on earth
resting.
rest in peace again? So what am I gaining? So I'm here to push the boundaries. I'm here to uh, work through discomfort and experience that, because after that, it seems to be a rest in peace.
Well, one of the things I'm finding so interesting with this conversation is the fact that this forming and storming is something that we do with almost anything that we're doing. Like it's
It
like a
is.
rule of
Yeah.
life almost. Like,
Yeah.
and we seem to want to skip the storming and go from forming to norming.
Storming is not necessarily confrontation, or it's the same question and answer that we have right now. I mean, it doesn't have to be emotional or somebody's sort of getting angry. It's
Right, yeah.
the question and answer part that defines the norming. Because when it's norming, then you during the performing, you just do it. You do the job.
Right.
So this question and answer, this is the storm. It could be considered the storming part. It's a bit of an
Yes.
exaggeration to make the point.
But it is to the point, because it's like
not necessarily it needs anger management or
well, I'm thinking when you're in the throes of a design, like, and I'll even
doing the
step
design.
it away from.
Yeah.
I'll step away from design. I'll say, in a band, in a music band, you've got a guitar player, you got a singer, you got a bass player, you got a drummer, you got a tambourine player, whatever. And what's, I think, difficult to, shall we say, gravitate or understand is when you're the lead guitarist, you think you're the band, but you're in a band. Whether you're playing the drums or you're playing the bass, you still got to play your part of that, right? And this could be a storming part when you get those, shall we say, pride moments where, well, I'm more important, right? And so now you're in your design world, and you've got the chief designer there. You got the guys who are making the decisions.
Right.
How does that work for? Because you also have like a hierarchy that goes on in this discussion, right? And it's not always the person who's, shall we say, the top of the hierarchical that has all the ideas, has all the interests.
The definition of storming is actually quite interesting. Still working on it. One of the things that always help us during the introduction of a new system, or new, because it all happens during the new.
Right.
When you're preparing a letter and you put it in an envelope, it's the same routine every day. You do it. There's no. It's already in the performing side for centuries.
Right.
But when you introduce new technology to the market, new to your people, ideas to your people, I think the important part is that be prepared. Do the thinking first. Don't use brainstorming. Do you remember we talked about this brainstorming? That is dangerous. Brainstorming means I'm not doing. That's our definition of brainstorming, because we failed drastically again because expectations didn't match during that event.
Yes.
Brainstorming means I don't want to do my homework, but I want to bring other people from other disciplines, detach them from the routine job they do, and ask them to do my job by helping me coming up with an idea. And that's the total waste of time I found in here. So it's again another play on words, but I think solution sharing is the major part.
You say that, to me, that was the original intent of a brainstorming kind of session. I mean, the idea is to bring a bunch of ideas together, and ideas can come from anyone, right?
Sure.
But part of the challenge to me with brainstorming was the fact that if you didn't have a decision maker there, you don't get further, because you just get a list. And then what we began to find is we were no longer competing on what the content of the idea was. We were competing on how many ideas we could get. So we get stuck in the means again, right?
Right.
Not to pick out what it is we're going to do, but hey, how many ideas do you have on your list, Payman? Because I've got 49.
49, yeah. Again, we talk about efficiency of the act and responsibility, because people are getting into the room and into one room and start sharing ideas. There's no responsibility there. So,
right.
are you okay with that? Or you want to assign somebody to actually work it out, think it through, and bring a solution to the table that everybody can comment on the solution.
Right.
That is effective, because that's what we used to do at Husky. And Robert actually was, rest in peace.
Yes.
Was the man who really, we learned, I really have a lot of respect for my life, for him.
Well, I think one of the things that I don't think I recognized when I worked with Robert was the fact of his visionariness. Like he's a very unique visionary.
It was very unique in the work in reviewing the
Yes.
projects. We always had to have 3 solutions, and then we have to have. It's like a court of law. You have to defend your ideas.
Yes.
And then the ultimate respect I exercised once with him was that he asked me at the end. He didn't make each decision. He asked me which one I go with. That was the ultimate respect that he had for the work we did. But we had different solutions. We had the pros and cons of different solutions, and so we have the bandwidth of a solution.
He also had an uncanny ability to know how things worked.
Yes,
in
interest,
in a speed of light timing. Like he could just look at things and see kind of how they worked. I was always amazed by that.
Yeah,
and I don't think I realized it when we worked there.
Yeah,
when I worked
it was
there,
because it was under the stressful meeting.
We were deep in the storming process often.
And those, when you think about it, you expand those. If you put that as to your daily exercise, then you will see, you can recognize when is the storming, when is the norming, and when do you have to stop the storming and go back and stop and start again, but have that in mind with this process,
right?
And then exercise it. And once you walk to your colleague, you want to discuss something. Okay, I'm forming right now. Forming means introduction.
Yes,
now I'm posing my question. Storming starts, and if the storming doesn't start, that means he doesn't care or she doesn't care. But that's probably
right.
Disinterest.
The worst thing in the world.
The disinterest. So how do I grab that interest? And then when the storming starts with question and answer, so people want to understand. Because norming and performing is very routine.
To me, from what you've described, if you've done the storming in this, however I say complete format, but in essence have gotten right down to like the brass tacks of what the issue is. To me, yes, norming and performing will just fall out.
Yeah,
you'll probably find out when you're in the norming, we haven't done enough of the storming yet.
You could get to that point. That would be that turns into try and error, which is very costly. If you haven't done enough storming and revising and refining during that time, then it would be extreme. If you just, let me just put it this way: if you want to be nice, you destroy your company. Nice. It's interesting. Nice. What's the word? What's the meaning of nice?
Yes.
Nice is a flower. Looks good.
There's a fluffiness to it.
There's no other language, and I searched in other languages. Nobody calls anybody nice in other languages. As far as I searched a few languages.
Right.
And why do we use that word? Because the word nice is easy to describe somebody. Yeah, he's a nice person. He's a nice guy. But every damage I received in my life was from a nice person, because the nice people, want to keep everybody happy, and
Yes.
that just like a bridge that you load with, overload it, and then the bridge breaks in the middle.
I think that's like almost a definition of trying to keep everybody happy. Like
Keeping everybody happy is the most dangerous thing you can ever do.
it's an interesting way of looking at nice because it's overused. It's non-confrontational, right? Like it's very close to indifferent.
It's another form of, I think the nice part goes along with the agree to disagree. That's another part that we don't have here. We don't agree to disagree. Or I don't know about other professions or careers or whatever accomplishments in life people have. Maybe they can use it. I'm not overriding it. But in when your boundary is a law of physics, there is no agree to disagree.
Mm,
Your boundary, your disagreement comes with the law of physics, not you.
right.
And our understanding of law of physics. So let's agree to disagree. That's a nice guy talking, because they don't want to have confrontation.
Right.
We don't agree to disagree here, because what does that mean? Okay, doesn't mean anything to us. We all agree that there is a limitation of technology. We all agree, or if you disagree that there is a limitation of technology, you have to have a point. So what is that point? Either that point is not the limitation of technology, or there's no okay, you guys want to call limitation of technology. I don't. I leave the room. Okay. So, well, eventually we go bankrupt that way, right? We're all nice people. We don't want to confront each other, or whatever you want to call it. We don't want to be in the storming part.
And it's almost seems to be a learned behavior.
Yeah.
Like it's not genuine in our hearts, is what I'm saying, right? But you have found a way.
Agree to disagree is when a group of people chatting over a beer, and they have their different opinions.
Right.
In when you're dealing with law of physics, there's no opinion, there's no feeling. Either F equals ma or not.
Right.
If it is not, what is it? So there's no. I have a feeling that F is not today equals ma. So that doesn't make any sense, right? Let's agree to disagree.
Right.
So,
right.
Agree to disagree is for chats and conversations, about things that your life is not depending on.
Right.
So,
And again, it doesn't get down to, in many ways, the heart of the matter. Like it's like
no, it doesn't.
when you hear that, it's like, okay, I just don't want to talk about it anymore. Right. Like it's like, and I see there's a time and place for it, but when you're trying to achieve something, try to create something new, and this is to me what Kepstrom does with companies, is that's where you're hired, is trying to figure out like something new that fits into a company's shall we say portfolio of products, which in the first order is a very tall one. Like we all kind of say, like, because I think most of us know what I think I read some years ago from a professor from Harvard, like 80% of new products fail.
Yes. Yeah. It's not about, you see, the word.
Yes, I'm using the word fail again.
This is typical. We use it. I use it all the time. What does that mean? It didn't meet expectations.
Yes, it's like.
So why didn't those products meet expectation is the question. Because when we say 99% of our startups fail, what does that mean? If they fail to perform, they fail to do this, they fail to, they were lazy. No, it can't be that, because if you're a startup, you had some mindset that you put behind it. You cannot just override them.
They didn't sell. They didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't.
So what happened? Which part of the expectation of the society? We deal with that every day. The expectation that we don't, we miss. We not necessarily ignore, and we don't. You can't. You miss it.
Yep. Well, an example to me is one of those things where, so I'll go to a waffle maker or like a panini press.
Right.
Many of the gizmos for the kitchen that they make, and to clean them becomes more of an effort than to actually use them. And so they sit in the cupboard because, yes, it'd be easy to make this sandwich and a panini, but you got to clean it.
Right.
And you can't just throw it in a dishwasher. And to me, this is like, the design's not complete here. We haven't thought completely through the cycle of the product. And I think this is kind of what you're saying here is what makes a product fail? Like, what is that? What does it hasn't met expectation? Or you put a cup in the dishwasher, and when you finish, the bottom of the cup is made so that the water doesn't run off of it; it stays in it. So you pull it out and it splashes.
Right. Yes.
Not complete, or it wasn't meant for a dishwasher, which could have been the expectation. But I'm using it as an example of how those things don't necessarily fit together, and yet you've gone down obviously the norming and the performing part of the process, but the performance is missing now because it's not doing what the expectation is set up.
Yeah, and sometimes you feel that it's a constant battle. Like it's a constant battle about understanding people's expectations. You cannot drop that every second of life. If you look at it, you want to understand the expectation to meet that expectation. People don't know. Sometimes I was thinking we use the word failure because we want to get away from the understanding of why we failed. We failed, and
That's enough.
just enough just to say we failed because people feel for us that we failed. We got back on our feet. We failed again.
Poured out. We failed.
Yeah, why? And I keep on asking myself, how come I failed? How could I fail? I mean, if I'm having a one-to-one conversation and say, I have a pen, I can give you this pen can write, and you say, I don't want the pen to write, I want the pen to erase. So it's not a pen anymore, it's the eraser. Okay, so you need the eraser here, right? So, okay, so we got to use this part, and so you don't need this part at all. So, yeah, I don't need it. And at that point, now, new ideas are not generated by conventional requirements. Like the person needs an eraser, it's a conventional method. So, how do I sell the pen part? Right? He doesn't need the pen, but how do I sell the pen? Because pen is needed too. Is good.
Right.
It's good to have. So how do I generate an application for the pen side? These are all these mysterious things. How do you manage that? You cannot really formulate it.
No.
But question and answer, the highest order of intelligence. If you go in a conversation that people just
don't want to be part of that,
they don't ask you any question. They listen to you and they respond to you. I think it would be very, very alarming.
Well, it's making me prompted. Like, there's two things that came here to my mind. One of them is what came, or what do you think were the early stages of your thought this way?
Mm-hmm.
And the second part of it is around products, which is kind of what I learned. And this is like anything, like, where do they come from? Like, I think Post-it note, it's an overused thing. But that didn't come from the design, shall we say, research center of 3M. It was an idea that I think understood for somebody wanting to mark pages in a hymn book.
Mm-hmm.
And they came up with some different ideas from it. So the first question, though, I'd like to go back to that is, like, where do you think this started with you? Like, did you start to have not the level to which you've reached now, but when you started to care about, like, how does this work with people? How do they care about? Because you're in essence saying to care about what you do.
Yeah. So you're basically talking about ideas, like how do we,
like when you've got, like, when you're creating ideas and trying to generate something out of those ideas, where did this sense for you really kind of start to say there's really something in it? Because you've always been curious, as you've said on previous conversations.
Yeah.
But where did that care start to really
For the new ideas. For the new ideas. For
yeah, like how do you like not just throw them out, or how do you have that hard discussion, like you're saying in the storming portion, to make it not just a stand up and walk out meeting, but an actual meaning that you can accomplish something, even if it does get heated.
That's it. About the ideas, I would say how do you generate the care for ideas first?
Yeah, like the care of wanting not just to like slash and burn somebody for an idea or a concept, but to actually like come up with this idea of forming, storming, norming, and performing. Like something's in your head that's caring enough to say, no, there's stages here, and there's ways that we can actually help people to get their ideas out. Like some people like to work individually, right? They're very sensitive about being criticized for their design. They're sure that it's going to work until somebody shows them that well, that doesn't necessarily work, right? But you've created a company that is focused on doing that. Do you know when like that point, did it come in school, when like in your younger years, in the sense that this matters? Or was it actually in your working life, or do you even remember?
I think in my curiosity is the engine.
Which you've had from the beginning.
Curiosity has been with me from as long as I remember, and applied learning. I remember when I was 10 or 12, one of my dad's really high ranked friend who was very intelligent. He was in a car, we were in a car driving, and then I was sitting in the back and told my dad, he goes, we noticed, I don't know how he noticed that, or it was amazing. I still remember that conversation. He says, I was sitting in the back, he goes, have you noticed that anything that Payman learns, he applies it the next hour? If he learns about a new word, he starts using it in a sentence a few times. And he noticed that from early stage of life. And that is, I think, the key. Applied learning. Learn and apply. When I learn, I apply. When I learn, I try to put it into a context of a solution. Another solution. If I find a word, I put it into a sentence. If I find an application, we try to sort of, if we find a sort of demand, we try to find capability for it. So that's the entire capstone right now. Right. Demand versus capability is our niche.
Yeah.
Curiosity about the demand.
Yeah.
And it's and how do we address that demand? What are the capabilities around us to be able to? And if you don't have it, we need to address it. And that's how the new products are born.
Were you always bold about this, like in the sense that like I'm remembering back even into my younger years, sometimes you'd be like, yeah, they probably know this already. I don't really think I should say anything. I'll give you an example, actually. It was years ago, and it was my father. He worked for the fair board. He was president at one time, Markham Fair Board. And I went up with him one night before the signs for the fair went out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at the signs, and I'm going, they're missing a day. Like the dates, like from October 1st to October 4th or whatever it was. And I can remember feeling very reluctant to say anything. And then I finally I think I kind of nudged my dad and I said, like, are one of those days missing? And of course, yes, it wasn't there. And they had to go reprint. I forget they put stickers or something on it. Okay. Did you have that sense, or like, were you not, shall we say, belabored or contained by like, this is okay to say this?
Yeah, that part, the fear of being ridiculed, or
yes, yeah,
that part has been very small in mind. So because when you're curious, you cannot hide behind
Reservations.
it. So you cannot
Yes,
have
yeah.
reservation.
Right.
It actually genetically it pushes you, so you may get get laughed at, or even to that extent. But the curiosity will push you to that level, because
You get beyond your emotion.
beyond your
Yeah,
emotion, you get
okay.
you beyond, because you want to know, it badly, you want to know it bad, you want to know it now. So this impatience, that is the engine for the of
For sure.
curiosity. It pushes this forward, and then you may fail. that word again, and said, oh, I pushed that. People are afraid of that failure.
Oh,
I think
yes.
I think
Deep.
the failure is very very intimidating. That the people don't want to fail, and because they don't want to fail, they say we always want to win, and then it comes into a circle of nonsense.
Yes.
Okay, how do you win? What's win? What's win? What is winning? What is so? Not it all comes back that you're not curious enough to carry a question and answer.
Yeah.
The whole thing comes back to that.
Yep.
Question and answer. You can ask you don't have to be very bold with your curiosity. Curiosity means question.
Yes. Yes.
You see, curiosity is a source of question. So be patient for the answer. Use your curiosity to ask another question. And then sometimes you get to a point that you know that, okay, you hit the wall, that person is just pretending that they know, that they don't know. But so at that point, you need to have the sort of ability to stop and redirect. So you say, okay, your learning stops.
Well, I mean, we've had this conversation many times, but like the number of times in the past where I just wish someone would say, I don't know.
I don't know. Yes, and that's the
not feel
hardest part. That's the hardest part to get from somebody, to say, "Yeah, I don't know," because
You're supposed to know.
you're supposed to know it all, right? So I think that's a great point. Yes, you brought it up. If you can push the person to see, to get the "I don't know" part, the mission accomplished. Because as long as the person knows this response, right, you get to a point that the person doesn't know. If they redirect, that means they're afraid of saying, I don't know. You have to stop.
Yeah.
It becomes a dichotomy, right? The two tennis court.
For sure it does.
Yeah. Then you have to have the ability to stop. But all of it comes back to curiosity. That is a source of question. Life is all that. And then when you question, you learn, and then you apply that to the next question. See, life becomes very simple, right?
In many ways, that is like that. It becomes complicated when you enter into that world where you're not being full in the sense of what you feel you know and what you actually know. And then you go down roads where well, you're answering this question, but the answer you're giving doesn't indicate that you know what it's just
You have
an
to have
answer.
that ability to, with practice, to recognize that, okay, you're reaching the end of it.
Right.
Is a hard stop here, because you now becomes separated, and now you're playing on the ego. You gotta have that. It's practice, because
Yes.
human.
Well, practice is a big part of the whole thing. When do you think you became aware of this in yourself? Because you're recognized for this ability, and I think you know that not everybody can do this, and certainly not in the, I'll say, progressive manner that you seem to be able to capture.
Takes up a lot of energy, though. By the time you get home, you're just walking in a cloud. Over time, it's it's a combination of part of the sometimes it's in addition to your genetics and abilities and sort of desires. It's to survive.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
It's like a lion that hunts to survive.
Yeah.
So you have to eh, be able to exercise that part to be able to understand and connect and
Mhm.
proceed and so on. That's basically becoming part of the survival game.
It is part of the expression, but your DNA. Like it's just how you think in many ways.
That's how this whole system. I have no plan B. That's curiosity, question and
So
answer.
that to me, this is one of those is a very interesting thought pattern because you brought this up earlier about no plan B, and I think for a big part of my life, I had always had plan B because my plan A was kind of in the art world, and so how did this start to kind of formulate? Because I mean, this discussion actually started from a phone call. You saying like, I don't make plans anymore.
Yeah, that part that's in line with that. Honestly, I don't know what you know. No, I don't have a plan B. What does that mean?
Yeah,
It means I think it's an expression to show that I believe in what we do,
right.
and I believe in the values, and this value has been proven to us that is needed to be able to change
Mhm.
the world for a better thing. So I think that's the part that's where we don't switch or give up, or but we reroute, course changes, all kinds of stuff, but always through that vision. Like
Mhm.
we believed in the DNA of a product. We believe that you should be able to go to in the future, go to a phone store and say, what's the DNA of my phone? I need the DNA. I need to
Right.
know the limits in life. We still strongly believe in that. I think becomes the story of Carl Benz. He stood by that car for years and years, right? Before it becomes commercial. So he's my role model in
Oh,
innovation. Carl Benz is, he started putting Nicholas auto engine on a cart where people were investing on faster horses.
yes. Mhm. Yeah.
So that story just by itself, you get a goosebump when you hear that. Okay, he puts the engine with no infrastructure, no gasoline station, none of those.
Right.
And people are mindset are all on the faster horses. How do we make the horses faster? How do we get breeding process better, which was the
Yep.
norm?
Yep.
How did he do that?
Interesting.
When you look at that and you say, oh, okay, even in the mid 1800, he came up with that. He put that. You look up the story. Even 70 years later, they were still calling the carts and horse a better option with authorities.
It reminds me kind of something that's a little more recent, but when you think of today, I'll say in North America, the ubiquitousness of cars, they're everywhere,
Yeah.
wherever you go. And in an essence, it's kind of like the phone,
Mm.
although it happened much more quickly and much more recently. But even with like the pioneers of the mobile phone, whether it be Nokia, whether it be Apple, and Jobs focus on it, even BlackBerry, did they have really any idea like we would all have a phone? Like I know that from a business perspective, we all wanted to do that, but were they thinking that it would have the attraction, almost the addiction that it has today, universally to humans? It's just amazing to me, and like the car in a way has become that too, right? Like or it became that long before the phone.
Yeah, I think those when you look at the stories of rotary phone and phone stations, or we all exercise those. The idea of this is back to another idea that I always follow, that why we innovate things. Why? What's the reason for innovation? We don't need anything. Nobody needs anything. Nobody needs anything new. Nobody.
We just think
Nobody needed anything 100,000 years ago. They were just going hunting, coming back, fire, that's it. So what was the purpose of new stuff? And the more I think about it, is the more I come to only 2 points. One is we want to be lazy. We don't want to do a lot of work. And so we do
things that
cater to that sort of laziness, which is not, I'm not saying bad, but it's just a humankind.
No,
that's what we have chairs. That's what we have chairs.
Yeah.
We want to be sitting, right? Why do we stand? We want to be sitting. So comfort or whatever whatever have you, and connectivity. Look at the innovations. Connectivity is the major source, even probably beyond comfort. Look at
connecting to one another.
Connectivity to one another.
Yeah.
Look at all of these. I remember one of the a friend of mine. His mom was years ago, and he came to visit. And after a month, he said, "Yeah, I'm going back. I'm going back to my own place. You guys just stay here and be happy that your computers are all connected together." That was like 20 years ago. He was saying we were all excited that our computers are connected together and so on. So connectivity, really.
Yeah.
Other than comfort, connectivity has been the source of innovation.
It's massive today, right? Like, it's startling that you could just pick a phone up and call someone anywhere virtually in the world. It's one of those things.
Cool.
I want to come back to the other plan B thing, because I wonder whether it's connected with that word failure, in the sense that we don't have a plan B because failure doesn't exist for what we're doing, what our plan and intention is, and we will figure out a way to do that.
Yeah, the plan B is a mysterious thing. Because if you say I don't have any plan B, or we change course all the time, I think the vision, when I started Capstone 20 years ago, my vision was generate a better quality of to push science and technology, to make a dent in science and technology. That was my vision. It still is. So there's no plan B. So you can easily come back and say, I have no plan B. We're still doing this. We're still doing this the same way. And we want to make a dent in science and technology. So can I have a plan B for that? That's my plan. If you go to the higher level of, I think that the vision that you want to pursue, if you say, my plan was I wanted to make a dent in science and technology, but it didn't work out. And I have now, I'm going to open a pizza shop.
There you go.
So then that's the definition of plan B.
Right.
Okay, it didn't work out. So why didn't it work out? You didn't work it through, or so your plan A, you didn't believe in plan A. Then you didn't work enough in plan A, right? I worked for years in plan A.
Well, you said 20 years.
In 20 years, I was in plan A. Before that, I spent years in developing the plan A
already.
So if you do your, natural progression in life, and then you realize, okay, this is my contribution, that's what I want to do, then you never change. But if you're just doing it as a rush to function, I think that's what. This is more of a plan, not having a plan B. I still want to make a dent into it, continue making a dent.
Well, I just know from our conversation today and what you've kind of gone through and seem to go through and continue to go through, that this is set, and fortunate for many of us that it is that, because we get better products that do come out and work.
Takes up a lot of energy.
They meet the expectation. Well, that's where it's coming to with the energy. The energy's always been a big part of our discussion that we have to have. And from the previous discussions, we've talked about love being a very big part of that connection. And I think love's a very powerful word. I think I've told you this, but one of the things that I kind of discovered was that love is kind of a perfect word balance. When you look at it as the alphabet and you see the LOVE and where their positions are in the alphabet, If you took like a fulcrum and put it in the center of the alphabet,
right.
love is one of the few words
So has the
that's perfectly balanced.
perfectly balanced.
Which I tend not to think is an accident. Like there's something about that makes it such a powerful word. And to represent so much, because it's like it's very connected with the heart. And when you talk about design, we've talked today quite a bit about the forming, the
Getting through
storming, the norming, and the performing. It all fits into that. Like when you think of even love for another person, that's kind of what it all fits together, right? The forming, you're going to have storming. If you think you're not going to have storming, well, I've got another thing coming. There's the norming, there's the performing, right? And it's a cycle almost.
The cycle, yes. The dangerous part of love is dependence.
So how so? How do you say?
For years, I defined love as missing a person, missing something, missing an equipment. So for years, 45, 6, 70A, the HP Hewlett Packard was the
Yes.
I was in love with that equipment, and I still do as a giant equipment sitting in my office. Historical sort of events happen with that. Now, equipment is something, but the love, the true love, the only dangerous part of true love is dependence, that it generates
A strong dependence.
strong dependence, and dependency is not.
Interesting.
You don't have any control on it. You don't have the control on the behavior of the other person, and
No, right.
the dependency is the hardest part, and this is what. But you know, you love your wife, you love your kids, you love your parents, you love. But that love is dependency, isn't it?
Yeah. there for sure is dependency on that.
What is it? It's a question in my mind. In the just recently, I constantly unlearn and learn. So I don't have any. That's why it was interesting that it's somebody from one of the parties knocked on my door, and it was please vote for this candidate. And I said, I have a question for you. Oh, Jesus!
Were they ready?
I said, how could you be all your life just be this, like be conservative or be liberal or be Democrat? How could you be? I wake up in the morning, I change my mind 100 times.
By lunchtime.
By lunchtime, I'm a different person. How could you be conservative all your life?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm asking. And he starts explaining. He said, I asked more questions. That person was a student working for this party. And then he called his boss and the person supervising the area. So an hour later, we got like 5 people at my house around so to get this guy out of the question and answer, because they said, you know what, this it doesn't make sense to me. This party system doesn't make sense to me. How could you carry one ideology all the time? I can't. Our vision is better humankind. It doesn't need a party.
No,
Just,
it is interesting.
You cannot have one party. How could you be one party guy all your life? It doesn't sound right to me. It doesn't make sense.
Well, it's when you bring this up, it's such an interesting thing, especially having gone through an election over the last few years, and in many ways, parties almost shift.
Yeah.
To what they represent, like the Democrats and the Republicans in the U.S. have almost shifted what they represent. Likewise, the conservatives and the liberals, right?
How could they have different interests?
Yeah.
For the society that is against each other. How could that be? Like the society needs to be improved based on the common elements of interest of the people, right? How could you have one party against the other, but they're both interested in the society? The society should be questioning that am I part of the interest, or who's interested in me?
The philosophy of politics.
So
that is an interesting.
That becomes like the question about the idea and question and answer. And when we talk about how would you stick to then plan A is more of a vision that you generate, because you cannot have beyond the vision. We said I have a note. I went to the 7 Habits training.
Yes.
That is a beautiful one, actually. It was very mind provoking.
Stephen Covey's book.
Yeah.
Seven Habits
Yeah.
of Effective.
And the coach asked me to put down my vision, and I put that down. I still have it. I still on the same path.
Oh wow!
I want to live a decent life with integrity, and make a dent in technology, science and technology, for people to remember. That's sort of a
you had it in there.
summary. I have it written. It's with me.
It's fascinating you mentioned the book, because of the few business books I have left, that's one of them.
Yeah. That's so. When you talk about plan A, plan B, I think that's more of a vision part. Vision. What's your vision in life? Applied learning. I don't have any plan B for it. I apply, I learn, and apply.
Well, it's interesting too, because when you say about how can you stay with the same party or the same, in its essence, the same thinking, or at least you think is the same thinking, and it's like, well, I want to be part of this team.
Yeah.
And we want to be that team forever. And now we come back to your forming, storming, norming, and performing. We don't want to go through the storming for that, because that's conflict. It's easier just to continue to support them.
To support that.
Whether I agree with the ideology any longer or not, that's not important.
When I look at the parliament, for example, parliamentary discussions and oppositions jumping on each other's throat, and I say, well,
what are we doing?
I don't see a proper I don't see storming here. I don't see something I don't see we go into the norming part. That means the question.
We stay in the storming.
We stay in the storming all the time. This loss of energy and inefficiency and no results. We need to get past through the storming part to be able to norm and perform. And if you're all working for the sake of society in the parliament, then why is it like this? Why is shows like this? And when politicians badmouth each other in debates, I question again. I said, aren't they all in the interest of society? How could you mock somebody's idea for the sake of winning this society's interest? Well, that guy has been brave enough to be there with some ideas. So why can't we put these ideas together? And get the society to go faster?
It's interesting how that comes together, because you'd think that over time we would have figured something like that out. And I sometimes wonder whether are we coming to a point where that's becoming non-functional, and we're going to have another kind of take place, because we're having such extremes take place, right?
Such extreme that is not heartwarming when you see the questions are sharp, which is fine, but there is no answer to it, or it's just it becomes a slogan and turns into shorts to be able to on YouTube or TikTok, so to get people's sort of because we're all affected by those, right? We look at that what he says, she says in a short 15 seconds.
Yes.
And that's
on to the next thing.
After the next, and that's how we form opinions. We don't have time.
I sometimes wonder too, with the idea that a person told me years ago, was one of the things you have to remember about politics is if you're not elected, you're almost non-existent. You don't have any power. So when you take that to we'll go back to what your comment, the Denzel Washington one around the devil. The devil's ignoring you.
There's something wrong.
Well, the converse works as well, right? And so you sometimes wonder whether, to what level will someone go in order to get elected? And this is it's kind of a bizarre situation. So it's like one of those. Well, we were just talking, because we were looking at. I had heard the comment somewhere that the ballot for the Carlton district or Carleton, where Polyev was elected, they had 91 candidates on the ballot.
Amazing. Yeah, that's an amazing number.
And you have to, like, I'm mentioning it here because I didn't know that. In fact, I thought it was made up. And then we went and checked it.
Yes.
And sure enough, it was true. Like, most of the time you see 5 or 6, but not 91. Like, that's that's a book almost. And to that point, it's like, it's what levels will you go to be elected?
Really?
Or get someone non-elected who is a component or a competitor.
Right.
Which turns around what we've been talking about, but I think it still comes back to what you said, which I think can be looked upon as almost a rule of life, is this forming, storming, norming, and performing.
Yeah.
Because it's a cycle. Like, you're looking at it from a design perspective with your clients as far as to enhance their abilities to make their products better. But when you look at it from a life perspective, to go through life without storming.
Yes. Without storming, that's
you're gonna get to.
Well, you're gonna be a nice guy.
There. I can't sum it up. I think with that, I think that kind of just turns us around at the perfect point. So this has been as I started today, this has been kind of a unique or a special episode of Better Than Not. Payman has allowed me to come into his office here and just to literally sit down and because I'm in town, just to talk about what we like to talk about. It's thinking, it's thought provoking, and hope you found that too, along with many of the other episodes that we kind of go through. So, with that, Payman, anything that let's do a shout out for Kepstrom. Like, if you want to find out more about Payman, his work, his company, your
www.kepstrom.com is our.
We'll put it on the description for this particular episode. But
we believe in making the point without the PowerPoint. That's another,
like that.
That's another episode.
That is another episode for sure. Right. Well, with that, thanks for joining us today, and very much, Payman. Thanks for joining us too.
It was a pleasure.
And bye for now.
Yeah, bye. Thank you.
Are we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not.